We will now be looking at the former United States Senator from Georgia, David Perdue's decision to file the paperwork for a campaign exploration committee. This is quite big news because the 2022 Senate is at stake. Because if we head over to the electoral map, let's just get to work. So we can predict Republicans are probably going to keep South Carolina and Iowa. They'll have a lean for North Carolina, a lean for Florida, a lean for Ohio, and a lean for Wisconsin. Democrats will have a likely Nevada, and a likely New Hampshire, a lean Arizona. Actually, I'm not gonna get into Georgia yet, and they were also gonna have a lean Pennsylvania. I mean, Democrats are probably gonna win, but to be conservative, I'm just doing that. And Arizona, what am I saying? Alaska has an interesting perspective because it is quite conservative and it's probably going to go red, but we'll go to Lisa Murkowski because the center is dealing with fallout after voting to convict the president, which you can see more about in my video on Donald Trump's second acquittal and the impeachment process. But she might just lose the primary and run as an independent, and she might choose to caucus with the Republicans or with the Democrats if the Republicans aren't keen to take her. So that might be an interesting perspective. But the race we're really looking at is Georgia. Because if Republicans manage to flip any of these seats, they have so many options. They can try for Nevada, for Arizona. I mean, that's a competitive seat. It's quite competitive. I mean, Mark Kelly did win a seat. He's a former astronaut, popular in Arizona, but although Doug Ducey, the popular governor, isn't running for the Senate seat, there are many others who might. I mean, there are lots of good candidates. Kelly Ward might, but if she runs, the Democrats are gonna have another term, but because she is quite polarizing, but still there's some interesting options there. But Republicans have quite a few targets. Arizona, Nevada, and Pennsylvania would be their main targets, and if they win any of them, for example, Arizona, and they manage to win Georgia, they have a control of the United States Senate. Or even if they don't, if they win Nevada and in Georgia, they still win. If they win Pennsylvania and Georgia, they still win. If they win New Hampshire, they could still do it. So there's just a lot of options. That's what I'm trying to say. I mean, at this point, the Democrats do control it, but they don't control Pennsylvania. But the fact is, this is what the 2021 Senate map is like. Georgia is a tilt Democratic, the only tilt state, and this is what it could look like. But if David Perdue was extremely popular, because if you look at the 2020 Senate result, we can just compare them. Because if you look at, just go to the detailed results. Where are they? Toss up Georgia. So Georgia, there. And so if we scroll, we can see. This is the interesting part. In the U.S. Senate special election, it went to a runoff. Let's go to full race results. Have they got this Senate? Maybe it'll be there. The Senate runoffs. Yeah, probably is here still. But, is it? Yeah, okay. So, I'll just use this. But the fact is, the Democrats won this race because Raphael Warnock got 2 more points than Kelly Loeffler, who's extremely unpopular. I mean, he got almost 100,000 votes more than her. That's a big thing in Georgia, but with its small population. I mean, it only has 16 electoral votes. That means 14 representatives, so that's about 14 into 7,000. So it's about 100,000 people in Georgia. Now, what am I saying? There's 700,000. Let's just do the math. So the average is 701,000 times 16, which is about 111 million. Of those, a lot of them probably aren't registered to vote, and about quite a few people vote in the presidential election, and there's a small drop. But to the point, this election, it went heavily for Raphael Warnock. But it's not just because he's a Democrat, Georgia. He's a Democrat from Georgia. They wanted more than a gridlock in Washington. It was because Kelly Loeffler, his opponent, was heavily unpopular. I mean, even if you look at the results here, it's when it actually comes back. Let's exit, and if we head to Joe, so you can see most of the results came from his home area, Fulton, DeKalb, not his home state. Not home area. He's from Savannah, here, but it came from where he's from. But the main reason he got a 2% over his opponent was because she was unpopular. If we head over to the other Senate race, Jon Ossoff with 50.6. If you look at this, there's some differences from here and here. I mean, like a whole bunch of places aren't that conservative. Like the top is the same, but somewhere in this area and there, it's less conservative. That's why it's interesting. But if we head over to this, where Jon Ossoff was there, we can see he did slightly better here, but all in all, he did way worse than Warnock because David Perdue was popular. Many people did a split ticket voting. In the runoffs, they voted for Raphael Warnock and David Perdue. I mean, not a lot, but it's still quite a bit of people. I mean, he had 269, he had 214, 2,214,214, and Ossoff has 2,269,000, so it was quite close. And that's a difference because David Perdue is popular. The only reason Raphael Warnock did so well is because of Kelly Loeffler. He owes her thanks in a way. But the thing is, if Raphael Warnock, a black senator from Georgia, which has been a historically conservative state, faces off with David Perdue, who is an extremely popular senator, the only reason he probably lost was a few reasons actually. Coronavirus, he wasn't able to campaign, how the state was in a lot of trouble because of vaccines, a pandemic, economic stimulus, and plus maybe something to do with him, his alleged deals taking advantage of the COVID briefing the senators received. So the fact is, in 2022, the political climate is going to be slightly different. I mean, it'll probably be more polarized by then. But the thing is, by then, lots of as the President Joe Biden said, almost all Americans, if not all, would have received vaccines by then. Quite a bit more economic stimulus would be delivered into the economy. Lots of jobs would probably come back, and that would mean instead of re-electing Raphael Warnock, they might just take away his seat. And while that is sad for Democrats and thousands of black people across the world, and these especially in the United States and Georgia, the really big problem for Democrats is when we head back to the big map. What happens if this plus this happens? Or this plus this? That's Democrats' number one worry, because as long as they have 50, it's not too bad. But the fact is, this doesn't even mean he'll run. He just decided to send in the papers. It doesn't mean that much. So as you can see, he just followed the paperwork with the FEC because, as you can see, Warnock is an easier target. Kelly Loeffler had it easy in a way because if it was Perdue versus Warnock, who knows? I mean, whoever went against Loeffler would win. But if Warnock had gone against Perdue, he might have lost. And that's why it's interesting. So, all in all, we don't really know what could happen. But the thing is, Perdue is a Trump candidate. So, that's the only drawback for Republicans who want to win the seat. And although he probably will win the primaries, I mean, he is a senator from the state, and he supports Trump. Georgia has a big Trump, but he's also not like Ron Johnson or Josh Hawley. He didn't go crazy in it. He did support some of the president's conspiracies, but he wasn't one of the main conspirators. Like, you don't see him in the Lincoln Project's ads when it you might see him or Kelly Loeffler for a little while, but their main targets are people like Josh Hawley, Ted Cruz, Martha McSally. So he might just win his primary, but the hard part for him is his general election, because Georgia is kind of becoming a suburb-based state, and Democrats are doing well in the constituency, especially with Trump or Trumpians on the ballot. So that would be the main item for Democrats to count on. But all in all, the next Senate is in jeopardy. No one knows what could happen. And that's why you should keep checking on Tane Pohorik for the latest news, all of them. Thank you.